Hi everyone. As you just mentioned, my name is Mahid. I'm a freshman at the University of Illinois Chicago, majoring in political science, and I'm a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community. And we're a community that's been established in the United States and much more in the Chicagoland area for a long time now. We've been in Chicago since the 1920s when Al-Sadiq Mosque was founded, which is actually the oldest mosque in America. We also have another location in the Illinois Medical District, if you guys know where that is, by Rush Hospital and Kakani Hospital. And finally, we have roots here, right here in Glen Ellen, right off Route 53. We have Bethel Jame Mosque, which is just about as old as me, if you want to personify it. 20 years old, yeah. And I'm telling you guys this not to brag about how old we are or anything like that, but so you guys will understand that there are members in our community who've been here in America for a really long time. And they've told me stories. They've told me stories of growing up with injustices. A lot of them actually grew up during segregation. One of the presidents of our mosque a while back ago, he actually grew up during segregation. And me, being the annoying 14-year-old that I was, I kept annoying him with questions about growing up in segregated America. We have members of our community who grew up in abject poverty, both within the United States and outside of the United States. And then we have members of our community who left their home country because they were facing persecution, because of their religion, because of their sex, because of so many things. And when you look at all this, you think about how can I as an individual work to solve this? And this is where Islam steps in for me. For me, Islam tells us that besides our obligation to God, we have our obligation to man, to one another. What besides just praying to God, what do I have to do for my fellow man? And Islam teaches us that you don't just have an obligation, you have a duty, a responsibility to step out of your comfort zone and help people in need. And that can be anything from saying hello to your neighbor, right? And reaching out to your neighbor in a time of need, to helping out in soup kitchens and going out of your way to volunteer. And that's where I think Islam really steps up to the plate. And I can speak from personal experiences that I was maybe a senior in high school. And my parents would drag me to the south side of Chicago where we have Al-Sadiq Mosque, oldest mosque in America, and they would help make me pack food for the homeless. And we would go out and deliver. And it wasn't like during summer break, it was on Sundays. And they would drag me, and I was 17 years old, I was thinking, man, I don't want to do this. I do not want to be here. And I just kept thinking that, but when we delivered the food to these people who were food insecure, who lived in abject poverty, it really made me think, wow, I'm really helping these people out. These people who did not know where their next meal was going to come from, and now they have food for the next maybe 2-3 weeks. You can see the gratitude in their eyes. And this is where Islam steps up. This is where Islam teaches us that you have a responsibility to help other people. And besides just that, Islam tells us that as a religion, you have to promote peace. The word Islam in of itself means peace in Arabic. And I guess as a Muslim, you have a responsibility to help promote that peace through rejecting extremism, through going out of your way to help other people, through going out and teaching that we are all one people, really. We may have divisions, and that's fine. There are things that divide us, but as a whole, we are one human race. And I think that's what Islam and social justice really come together. Thank you.
Yeah, jump right in.
All right.
All right, Sonia.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Sonia Irwin from One Community, but I'm going to start off by saying happy spring. And as Josh already mentioned, this year is a really unique month, right? So Ramadan started April 1st, celebrated by Muslims around the world. We had Vaishakhi on April 14th, which is celebrated by Sikhs and Hindus. And then I definitely, especially with Gilda, I want to, and please correct me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, Samar, right? Samar.
Pretty good.
Okay. So the Passover started last Friday, and it is continuing for all our Jewish family and friends. Happy Easter on Sunday, and I want to wish Nancy and Adrian happy Ridvan, which is starting this evening, which is celebrated by the Baha'i. So there is definitely a lot to celebrate, which really makes this a perfect month to talk about multicultural and interfaith understanding. Before I introduce One Community, I also want to thank our Muslim friends for being here, because they're fasting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they will need to break their fast in about, what, 45? Almost an hour. 7:38, if I'm not mistaken.
Impressive, very impressive.
We'll go tell the cafe not to close.
That's right, we should, absolutely. So, I mean, so we really appreciate that, because that is, it's hard to fast, but for you to accommodate us at this time is much appreciated. So a little bit about One Community. One Community is an initiative to embrace our community's diversity and to raise awareness, acceptance, and involvement of all our members. So we started 2018, and our work is built on 4 pillars: building relationships, building community, expanding knowledge, and engaging local government. So I'm not going to talk about all of the avenues, but what I want to focus on is the foundational elements of building community through building relationships, through building strong relationships. That enables us to not only just connect with each other, but to appreciate each other's experiences and to understand where somebody else is coming from, right? And develop those friendships, because the way we improved, our community and the world and the society is by building those bridges and building those friendships. So you can find out a lot about One Community on the website, so I'm not going to go through that, and I really want to get into the discussion part, but I thought it was important to actually touch on language. So a lot of times we hear that the U.S. is going to become a majority-minority country. This framing is actually problematic, right? And because it portrays that there are 2 segments, and one is growing and the other is not, and kind of implying that there are winners and losers. Right? So, by the way, I want to acknowledge this. I'm going to reference an article from The Atlantic, which is really insightful in this space. So, and the second question is, who's a minority? Is it non-whites? Well, in that case, what about Hispanics? And who's a non-white? Is it anyone with any trace of non-European blood? Is that non-white? Because that's kind of how it's portrayed, right? Especially when you take the Hispanic, context. So it's actually troubling, because it is kind of a reinvention of the one-drop rule. Are you guys? I'm sure many of you are familiar with that, which goes back to the slave era and the Jim Crow era, where you had any trace of ancestry from African descent, you're black. And that was a bad thing, right? So in this case, is by having any trace of non-European blood makes you a minority, and is that a bad thing? And I say that from actually, and we can talk about it more in our discussion. I mean, my kids are multiracial. They are combined, so they are a minority. We actually just did college applications. It's a puzzling question for me. Am I white? Well, am I Asian? I mean, it really is, and it's interesting. It's about U.S. is the only country which does this. So, interestingly, that what diversity is in this country, whichever way you look at it, I'm not going to use the minority phrase, is increasing not only at a national level, but at a personal level. So 3 out of 10 Asians, 1 out of 4 Latinos, and 1 out of 5 Black newlyweds are married to a member of a different racial ethnic group. And more than 3/4 of them are married to somebody who's white. 1 out of every 9 babies which are born in the United States today will be raised by a multiracial family. And I also want to get into really the interfaith discussion here as well. 39%, or 4 out of 10 Americans who have married since 2010 have a spouse who is of a different religious faith. So all of this is saying is that we are at a personal level, in our very closest of relationship, diversity is embedded. So why has that become difficult for many people? Is it because of that framing that, we're becoming a majority? I mean, it makes people apprehensive, right? So it actually was surveys done by The Atlantic showed that Americans are much more perceptive and much less anxious when we say it's a blending of diversity as opposed to we're becoming a majority minority. And that they're much more open to being inclusive, investing in public good, much more so. So I think language is very, very important here. And I do want to, and as I talk about language, I also want to say that when I say blending of diversity, it is not that, it's not the melting pot, it's not that we are dissolving into something different. It's not that one culture is dissolving to the other culture. It's the fact that we are able to honor and appreciate each one of those cultures. Because that is really what is, I mean, this country has one of the most unique assets that it is multicultural, and it has been, and the power that it gives if we are able to understand and harness that. And that it's not a zero-sum game, right? It's not that by acknowledging the beauty and the contributions that everybody makes, it doesn't make any other group's contribution any less significant. It makes it actually more powerful and more complementary. So, so I kind of just wanted to say that. So it is one community works a lot in this particular space. We do have events where we have storytelling events where we actually share some of these stories similar to maybe here. We have had fairly, what did you say, intense discussions on conversations of race between law enforcement and community members, particularly youth. We have done, we've been at the 4th of July parade, which brings all the community together, but also we've stood in solidarity when certain groups are heard. For example, when the horrific events took place at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, where the attack on Christchurch Mosque. We were there at the synagogue, at the mosque, to stand in solidarity, because it is important that we say and do what we believe in. That we cannot, it's not just in writing that we are acting, all of those. So we're there in solidarity, and we have done a lot of educational programs, including some of the documentary that Nancy has done as well on the Long Shadow, all the partnerships with the Glenbard Parent Series, and we have also influenced the local policies, right? So that we are becoming more inclusive.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we can all do our little part and be careful, not careful, but cognizant of the language that we use, because it does make a difference. So thank you, Josh.
Yeah. One follow-up piece there would be, what language, if we want to get rid of majority, minority, what would you say would be better?
Well, that's a good question.
And even if it's changing the paradigm, like we're not just changing.
We're becoming a more diverse America.
The High Scripture refers to the concept of unity in diversity, that we have a common purpose, that our diversity is not overshadowed by our united purpose of serving humankind. So we don't intend to overtake all the cultural variations that there are in the world, but we celebrate the diversity of all the cultures as we all work together towards that common goal.
What should our listener or viewer, where should they go? What are some of your favorite sources? Books, online, heck, TV, that inspire you or that you find to be very important and enlightening?
I think actions speak louder than words. Really. If you want to make a difference in this world, you got to step outside and do it. There are soup kitchens in every town in America. There are homeless shelters in every town in America. If you don't really need to look outside and research anything, you can learn through your experiences. I think a lot of people are scared to go out and do something because they think they're not going to be able to do it. They think they're not going to have the resources to do it, to help people successfully. But if you go outside and you really look, you search up homeless ways to help homeless around me, or soup kitchens near me, or anything like that, you'll find 1,000 places all throughout America helping people. And I think it's not, you just got to step out of your comfort zone and do it.
Do you feel that it's been part of your personality for all of your reflective life that you wanted to get out and do something? Or did you have a breakthrough moment where you had to make a decision about your own boundaries to push in order to have that?
I think for me personally, my parents and my siblings really enforced helping people out for me. Right? They really reinforced that as a part of your faith, you have to help people, right? You can't just be sitting at home all day, right? During summertime and during the weekends, and you can't just be sitting at home doing nothing. You have a responsibility to go out and help people, not just because you're a Muslim, not just because you're an American, but because you're a human being, right? And I believe, and I hope all of you believe this, that we have a very deep and very intrinsic, at a very deep and intrinsic level, we as human beings have a need to help people. We want to do it, and I think people just need help getting out of their comfort zone and doing it.
Excellent, wonderful. Well, we're at the end of the presentation point. So we're going to thank everybody who's watched and or listened.